Welcome to another episode of Anékdota. I am Angeles and this is Aída.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And today we have another interesting topic, Aída. What are we going to be talking about today? What are we going to unveil today?
Mm. Hello, everyone. How's it going? Well, yes. Today we have another interesting episode. They're all interesting.
Exactly.
Okay, so today we decided to call this episode Your Truth is Sacred. Filter the rest. So there you go. It's on the table. Go. What does that tell you, Angeles?
Tell me. Well, for me, is all of those messages that the universe sends us through, I don't know, through conversations, through many ways, or even like a podcast or a video. And sometimes we take those messages, but then are we really filtering what those messages are trying to tell us? And do they really apply in our reality? Because sometimes we get messages, but not necessarily do they apply in our reality. That's how I see it. And that's how I filter things that come my way, like conversations or as I mentioned earlier, podcast episodes, um, many videos that come my way. Like I listen to it, but then I take a moment to kind of go within and really ask myself, does this really mean something to me? Is this really applying to me, to my reality, to what's happening in my life? I think it's important to have those filters.
Okay. That's interesting. I think, yeah, the key word here is filter, because I agree with you. I mean, I think there's so much info like in our daily life that comes our way, like you said, through conversations, through podcasts, or even just like just walking around, we're seeing so much stuff. And it's like, okay, how much are we filtering in? Or how much are we taking in? Are we taking all of it in? Does everything truly apply to me? It's all those, I don't know. I mean, I question a lot. I question a lot. And even like in a conversation, like I don't take things to heart as if they were directed straight to me, just because someone had a bad day or something. Or even the message, if someone's giving me advice per se, it's like I don't take it. I mean, I listen and then I really kind of like dissect it and say, okay, yeah, I can apply it, or it doesn't really resonate with me, and not in a bad manner, just maybe using that criterion that we were talking about in one of the episodes. I don't know. What do you think?
No, and sometimes it is important to kind of question, okay, how many times has this been appearing in my reality? For example, for me, just last night we were talking about how many times does the word trust has show up in my life in this past month or in this past 2 weeks, and it's like, okay, that's a message then. Like that is a message that the universe is sending me. But it doesn't mean that everything that comes my way, it's a message from the universe, or it's, as you just said, if someone is giving me their point of view, or is actually saying, oh, I think maybe you should look at this or this and that, not necessarily does it means that I have to go that route. I would just take it in. I will analyze it. I will do a lot of introspection. I will question myself a lot. I will question my reality and then decide if that applies to me or not. Because there is things that show up in our life once. Maybe they're trying to kind of direct us through a path or through an answer that we're trying to find, but not necessarily everything that comes our way. So I think it has to do a lot with introspection, a lot of questioning, a lot of knowing ourselves, um, and being very aware of the reality we're in, and filter every single conversation, every single video that comes our way, every single podcast, every single um comment from others, from outside. Like there has been also in my journey this part of where this gurus have appeared, and I just didn't even, for me it has to appear several times in my reality for me to pay attention to it.
To actually listen to it.
Yes, yes, it
Yeah.
has to, because otherwise, as I just said, I do a lot of introspection. I meditate daily, and I kind of see what's in my mind. I see what's my internal dialogue and what is coming my way. And now when I see a repetitive pattern appearing in my life, or a repetitive name like Yogananda or Baba G, or G, or Lady Masha, or things like that, then I'm like, okay, now this is trying to tell me something. And then the universe presents it to me, once I'm ready to see it. Um, but I think it's important to have that filter to kind of take in what I'm seeing in this present moment and disregard everything else, and not just let everyone or anything enter our life, right? Or do you let anything or anyone or any comment just enter your life? Because I don't see it happening
Yeah, no.
just like that.
No, no, no. I mean, I listen, like, like we've talked about, it's, and for example, like us, with this project, we're sharing information based on our perspective. It doesn't mean it's the absolute truth. And if we are sharing, I think as a listener, if I listen to my, to the show, like after the recording, to the episode after the recording, um, or any podcast, I'm not gonna take it to heart. I'm not gonna take it like an absolute truth. I'm gonna listen to it and see if it resonates and it gives me food for thought. That's how I see it. Gives me, and that's kind of like the purpose of this podcast too, just to bring topics to the tables so that we can invite others to think about those topics and come to their own conclusion. And I think that's how I approach it, almost everything in life. Or I try to, um just always using my own criterion, not judgment, but criterion, and just take what resonates. Something always, like in a conversation or even a podcast or a TV show or whatever, there's always something that stands out. It's like, okay, why did it stand out? It could be just like a simple phrase, something very vague. But if it stood out, it's for something, right? And then I start digging into that.
Yeah, definitely. And you just touch a very interesting point. Like those things that kind of jump, outside of everything else that was presented, then it's like, okay, that's where I'm going to put my attention. What is that trying to tell me? But not every single thing, literally, like I have seen people where we are having a conversation with them and they're like writing down every single thing. And I'm like, no, 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 just take what it applies to you, to your reality, what's presenting itself, or what keeps repeating, what you have to see a pattern. At least for me, it has to be something that has been showing up in my life like multiple times. For example, like the dreams. Like every time I talk to someone, it's like,
6
pay
months, people, 6 months for her to. to actually take
Yes,
the
it took me 6 months to realize that, okay, pay attention to the dreams. And now every time people tell me, like last week, I just had a meditation and the guy was like, pay attention to your dreams. And I was like, oh, I know. Like, I will pay attention to my dreams. I am paying attention to my dreams. I am writing my dreams, right? But that has been something that has been presented to me multiple times already. And that's when I'm like, okay, let me pay attention to this and not just take someone's word for granted, like, and not just also take it in as a total truth. Like, there has to be some kind of discernment, I feel, in my end. And there has to be this kind of understanding of who I am and what's happening in my life. Again, like I feel like I'm repeating myself, but yes, there has to be something that it's constant there trying to show me something. But if there's nothing, then why would we take it in, and I think sometimes when we don't know ourselves very well, when we have been living a life where we take everything in without having that filter, without even going within, because sometimes I think the problem is that we don't want to go within because it's really hard to go within and it hurts. And there's going to be a lot of things that we're not going to like, but then, you have to, if you want to really unveil the truth of who you are and where you want to get. But a lot of people don't want to go within. They just want the steps 1 through 5. Give me the steps and then I'll go and do that. And it's like, no one has your recipe. Your recipe is unique to yourself. So find your own recipe within. And
There's
that's
no
what,
one size fits all. I
no,
don't think, at least I don't think
no,
there is.
no.
Yeah.
Because we are unique beings. There's no one else out there like Angeles. There's no one else out there like Aída. We are irreplaceable. There's no way there's another like me in this world. So there's no way someone else is living the same life. Even if it seems like it, no, there's no one else who has lived all of the experiences that I have lived. So my recipe to go within is very unique.
We can go through similar situations, but at the end of the day, each of us experiences it like, differently. We can go on the same trip. We can be watching the same movie, but we're not experiencing it the same way. So it's different. So I think that's super important, because I can share with you something that has worked for me, or that it's, that works for me, but it might not work for you, you know? And I think it's up to you to actually say, okay, yeah, that sounds good. I'm glad it worked for you. I don't think that's going to work for me because I function differently. I think differently, or I have these other experiences that have taught me otherwise. And I know it's not feasible.
Right. That's why when someone tells us, oh, I'm gonna teach you a technique to manifest, for example, it's like, no, like we all have our own unique technique to manifest. Maybe for me it's through the word, maybe for you it's through, visualization. I don't know. But everyone has different ways of manifesting the life we want and changing the things we want in our lives. So when someone tells us their feedback about something, we are actually questioning, because I feel like sometimes we question the other person and we take it in as if that is the truth and the absolutely truth. And it's like, no, like I take in what you're telling me and let me do a little bit of introspection. Let me take a look at my reality. Let me do a little bit of discernment to see what applies to me and what doesn't apply to me.
Mm-hmm. And truly see if the shoe fits or not.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, not just take it in like, okay, that's it. I was told this is it, or Yeah. And the reason why we decided, I'm going to bring this up. The reason why we decided to talk about this was because during a conversation with a couple other friends, someone brought up a health issue that she was going through, and I mentioned, well, it could be related to this or that, and several things, just from my perspective, not based on her case specifically. I was surprised to see that she took it as a truth, like, oh, okay, so this is what's happening to me. This is what I need to work on, and I'm like, no, 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 wait, no, 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 no. I was just bringing it to the table for you to see if something resonated and, and actually start exploring those options to see which one fit. So my invite here, and that's why I thought it was important for us to bring it up, and that's why I'm mentioning it, is like not to take anything
Literal, right? Or
literal. Exactly, exactly. Listen, like, I invite everyone to fully listen to the words that are being said, and to actually use your own criterion and decide, well, that's her point of view. It doesn't necessarily mean it's my truth. That's why we call this episode "Your Truth is Sacred," because the truth is not absolute. At least from my perspective, there's not an absolute truth. I heard this, and I don't know if I shared it during the last episode, that I heard that truth is well, in different words, so they said it better, but in my own words, like the way I understood it is like truth is made up of all these different truths. you know so from your truth, my truth, someone else's truth, it makes up like an overall truth. There's no absolute truth. It's just whatever makes sense to each one of us as individuals.
that's true. And one of the things that my therapist told me one time, he was like, he was telling me about experience he had with this guy who came in to a gathering that they were having, and this guy started saying all these lies apparently, right? About that he was all this, basically he was a shit, right? and,
Yeah.
and he was like, and then when he left, the other guys were like, "Oh, don't believe him. He's full of shit," And my therapist was like, "No, I don't think he was full of shit. I think there's some truth within all of that full of shit that you guys are saying." Um,
Mhm.
he's like, because everyone speaks their truth, their reality, even if it seems untruth to us. There's something within that person that is making him say that. And there's a story behind that he's making up, but behind all of this story that he's making up, there's some sort of truth to it. And I never thought about it like that. When he told me that, I was
That's
like,
great.
wow. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah, maybe, you know, all of what he's saying
His own little world, it's
in
true.
his own little world is what he truly desires. And even if he's not experiencing, even if it's not truth, he's creating the world, but it's something very profound. It's something that is coming out of him, a truth that is coming out of him that he really wants to live within, even though he's not living yet. But there's some kind of truth. In every lie, there's some kind of truth. And I was like, wow, this is very interesting what you're telling me.
That's a
And
whole other level of being open to it. Yeah.
and
Of respect, I think. I think it's also, being respectful.
let's also let's say this as well. I probably took it in as what I'm telling you right now, but maybe my therapist meant it in a whole different way that I'm taking it in. So
Yeah.
everyone has their own truth. And it's just kind of understanding it. Oh, what's my truth and why am I making this a truth? Is it really, as I mentioned in other episodes, is it really mine, or is it a perspective from someone else that I'm taking in as the truth.
Or is it just because it's easier to take it
Because I
than
don't
to
want to go with it.
actually do the work and figure it out myself?
Right,
Or
because
why? I thought it was super interesting.
yeah, I think so. I to be honest with you, I honestly think that it's very hard to go within
It
and
is.
to be truly truly honest with ourselves. It's something that is gonna hurt, and not everyone wants to experience that. Not everyone is willing to go through that path and actually understand themselves and understand how they're creating their own reality and how they are manifesting through their actions, through their words, through their thinking, and their emotions, all of these things that are being presented in life. And we just want a recipe most of the time where, okay, give me a 1 through 10 kind of thing so I can manifest what I want in period. And it's like, no, it is a lot more deeper than that. A lot more deeper. And we talked about this, Aida, the other
Yeah, I know. I always use this analogy that, like manifesting and things like that. It's not like setting up a choreography or sharing a choreography, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then you turn and then you clap and blah, blah, blah. You're not doing the hokey pokey here, you know? It's not. It's not. So, a lot of people come to me and it's like, well, how do I do this? And just tell me. It's like, it's not that I don't want to tell you, it's just that there's no step 1, step 2, now you do this, now you do that. No, you need to figure it out, and whatever makes sense to you, then that's what's truly going to work. And a lot of people don't understand it either. And it's
no.
not like I don't want to share, it's just that I'm sharing my truth. I can't give you 1, 2, 3, 4, and later on, you can come back and say, well, it didn't work. Well, of course it wasn't going to work because it worked for me, but it doesn't mean that it will work for you. You have to figure out your own way to make it work.
Right. And we are all living different realities. That's the truth. We are all living different realities. And for example, even I remember when I started my therapy with my therapist, he was like, this is not going to be a process of 1 month, 6 months. No, this is going to be a long process. And this is going to be a process where I'm going to go ahead and help you as much as you want to be helped. Because
Exactly. It's your
it's
job,
yes,
basically, to do the work.
right, right. So I can tell you what I see, what I am, you know, what you has been telling me in all aspects, but that doesn't mean you're gonna go ahead and do it. At the end of the day, you have the last word. For
Word.
example, when I went through my separation, it's like and I've talked to you guys about this, like he was just like, do you really want to be there? Like, is that what you want for yourself? Because if that's what you want, there's no point of us continue this. You're wasting your money. I'm not wasting my time because you're paying me, but you're wasting your time, your money, and
Yep.
everything. You have a lot more to lose than I do. I have nothing to lose because I'm getting paid. But what do you want? When he told me things like that, I was just like, wow. And that's the kind of situations that should give us like a wake up to say, what am I doing with my life? What am I accepting? What am I taking in? Do I truly want to go within and go to the very profound of my being and be able to build my own recipe to manifest the life that I want?
Yep. And I also think it has a lot to do with responsibility. It could be, I don't know, maybe there's some of us who aren't ready to take on that responsibility, of assuming our own actions, our own decisions. And we prefer someone else to tell us so we can blame them. Oh, well, because so and so told me, I did this. And it's like, well, I mean, that, I don't know. I just thought about that. It
Well,
could
at the
also,
end of the day, we have the last say, We are the ones that making our own decisions every single day. We can't blame someone else. I
oh,
can't
yeah.
say, oh, it was because of what my therapist told me, because he pushed me to do it, then I left my relationship. No. It wasn't because of that. It was because he actually went so deep to ask me, is that where you want to be? Is that how you want to be treated? And I took that decision and the action to say, no, that's not how I want to be treated. That's not the kind of relationship I deserve. That's not the kind of love that I want. So it was my decision to
Mhm.
say, this is
It
it.
just brought it to the table for you to like question yourself
Exactly.
and like think
And
about
again,
it.
there goes the same thing. We have to filter what comes our way. So he brought it to the table. I filtered, I questioned, I went within, within the most profound areas of my life, and I gave myself the answer, like, no, this is not what I want.
Mhm.
So why am I here? Exactly. Why am I here? But that's where most people don't want to go.
Yeah, because it's uncomfortable and it means a lot of making a lot of decisions and
Taking responsibility for your own actions, and people
assuming
don't want to do
responsibility. Exactly. And sometimes it's just easier just to leave it alone. Just to leave it alone and not do anything about it. Like my friend says, I mean, if I already know I'm fucked up, why dig in more? I mean, I already know. It's like, okay, well, fine. Don't do anything about it then. And it's valid too. It's valid. But if we truly want to see a change in ourselves, in our reality, then yeah, we might just need to do something about it, but something that comes from us, not because someone else is telling me.
Definitely, definitely. And I think the invitation in this episode is to filter what comes your way. Does it really applies to your life? Does it really applies to the reality you're within? In question, meditate, and do a lot of introspection, and go to the deep, to the profound areas that it might hurt, but it will bring you the truth. It will let you create that secret recipe that each one of us have to live according to our true self.
Especially now that we're adults, right? I just remember that we talked in another episode about when you were a kid, that a teacher told you, that you were a burra, that you weren't smart, and that stuck with you and you took it in, like as a truth. But you were a kid. But now we're adults.
Right.
We're
The
adults.
discernment has come in and kind of
Exactly.
be like, am I really? Like, no, like I have proved myself that I am a very smart woman and very capable and very independent and all these things. So why am I still believing this, right? Or why am I still letting this affect me now in this reality, in this time and place that I'm in now?
And I understand too that, we're all going through a process. We all have a process. We have different timelines. I do understand that. And but because I mean, just for the sake of each one of us going through a process, that's like the big invite. That's a big emphasis that I want to make here. Don't take everything to heart. Don't take someone else's opinion or point of view as an absolute truth. Just question it. Just really take those words and just split them apart and see what comes out of it. Maybe there's nothing in those words that apply to you, and maybe there is. But that's up to each one of us to figure it out. Don't let anyone else define you. Only I can define myself. Only you can define yourself. And, so that's like the big emphasis that I'd like to make here.
Definitely. Yes, I think it's important to have that discernment and understand who am I and why am I letting this affect me, or why am I letting this be part of my life, and do I not want it? Do I accept this comment or this perspective? Does it really apply or not? I think it's the biggest invite here. And to remember that we are unique beings. So no one can really, we can hear many voices giving us different perspectives, but at the end of the day, we only know the truth, and we only know our own truth, our own process, and our own path.
Right. And I feel like a lot of times, like, yeah, we hear comments that they're not necessarily meant, to be like, they don't come from a bad place, but still, it's like, okay, let's listen to it. Truly listen to it and break it apart and see if it's actually something that I want to take in. Be that filter. Use that filter. Use it wisely. That's my invite for the week. Be that filter and use it wisely.
Definitely. I agree with you. We must filter everything that comes our way. Thank you so much for this episode, Aida. It was really nice to
Short
talk
and
about
sweet.
this. It was short. Yeah, it was short, direct to the point, and
It's like-
sweet. But yeah, don't get full. Yesterday we spent like 6 hours trying to
Tried to record and we just chatted and chatted and chatted.
we just kind of went into it very deep. So yeah, it took us 6 hours of talking to find out to
To
kind
come
of
up with
talk about this.
20 minutes of content. But anyway, we're here and we're sharing with all our hearts. So yeah, just honestly, that's my invite. Be that filter and use it wisely. Yep.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who's watching us. And Aida, as always, it's a pleasure to speak to you
Likewise.
and to be sharing this space with you.
Likewise. Thank you, Ángeles. And thanks to everyone for listening and your comments too. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye. Thanks.